Thank you. I suppose, look, I listened with great interest to Argelina and Cesar's presentation. They gave a fairly good synopsis of what it's like to be in academia and the challenges that are faced there. Now, clearly I can't solve all of these issues, nor will I attempt to. However, I do believe platform like ACC, Autodesk Construction Cloud, does offer some of that to us. So my talk is about administration of ACC for academics. Now, what is it first of all? It's a cloud-based CDE, obviously by Autodesk. It comprises of core modules and then expansion modules that you can access. So you have documents, you have insight. So documents is your storage repository, insight is your data analytics sitting on top of that. You have design collab, model coordination, takeoff, build, and cost management. Now, it's not my intent to go through all of those today. Clearly, we don't have the time. That said, though, I would like to point out that there's still a little bit of confusion out there in the marketplace between ACC and BIM 360. And this is, as an academic, this is the thing that I get. It's like, okay, people are talking about BIM 360 and ACC. ACC is the next evolution. BIM 360 functionality has been built in there. It's not fully migrated, but essentially at this point, if you're in academia, make the jump to ACC now. In fact, if you haven't done so already, it's kind of there. So what is it? Well, for me, what are the learning opportunities offered by this? And it's a collaborative environment for learning. We can make this happen now. There's deep integration with Autodesk Revit. So when you have students saving files to file systems, things like that, just stop. Just send it straight up to ACC. And now we got the ability to collaborate and monitor and see what's going to happen. And we can talk about use cases in a little bit. We have shared access to design and construction documentation. So what I would typically do is I would put up project briefs, various bits of information, library parts, all that kind of stuff. I dump all that up onto ACC. Students have access to it, and I'm not worried about anything else. It just works. So they have easy access to those materials. And one of the big advantages for me is that I get to monitor their learning process and how they're progressing themselves in these applications. So you can see there's two little dots here on this. Those would be simply issues identified. Those issues could be identified by me or by them. It's built-in functionality on the system. So if I'm not happy about something, tag it off, send them a message, off it goes. And that's our centralized communications via issues. It's real. It's something that they can use. They can put their fingers on it and it can be explained to them. It's not abstract in any way. So if you're going to implement this system, there's a couple of decisions you're going to need to make as an academic or indeed as an institution. Now, I'll also say that a lot of this is also equally applicable to industry itself in terms of an ACC implementation. The first thing is, well, how are you going to distribute your instances? Now, when I talk about an instance, I'm talking about ACC itself. ACC has an instance, and then underneath that, you're going to have projects, and users will access those projects depending on. Now, think of it like going into 5 different versions of Facebook. They're all completely separate if you had such a thing. So that's what your instance would be. Now, the question is whether or not you do that as a single instance for the entire institute, that you do one per department, or you do one for individual lecturers. That's a decision you need to make. I would imagine from the administrative overhead perspective, it makes an awful lot of sense, to me at least, to stick it at department level. Okay? After that, you have your instance administrators on top of that, and it means that people don't go stepping on each other's work, which can be nice. So you can also have instance administrators for a number of different users. So just because you decide to go with a single instance across an institute doesn't mean you're limited there. You can have administrators there. That comes into play in a little bit now. The next thing you need to think about is your user access level. So you're going to have the top level there is the account administration. This is kind of like a hierarchy, where your account administrator has access to everything. Project administrators have access to everything on a project, but not the whole instance. And your project member has access to things that the project administrator has let him access to. And of course, you have executive level, which I've never quite figured out. I'm pretty sure that's pretty much reporting, and don't touch it, they're only going to break it. And of course, we have deep Revit and Navis integration, whether or not you want to go that direction. Now, if you're going to get your students to start talking out to a platform like ACC, you're probably going to have to talk to your own IT department to see if that's feasible. Personally, I've had no issue with it whatsoever. It just works, and I'm okay with that. Next thing we have is typical usage in an academic setting. So that's our first step. Next thing here is whether or not you're going to have a single ACC project used for each module or a collaborative module. So one module is there, and if there's multiple modules using the same like coursework type, you might decide to stick them all together. Now, student access level would normally be higher than you would have for a commercial user. Now, there's two aspects to ACC to consider, particularly in an academic setting. The first one is what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to look at collaborative design, then what you're trying to do there is give students access to those files so they can make the updates, make changes, distribute that, and do it nice and easy. If you're trying to get them to do and learn how to use ACC as a platform, then you're going to have to look at making them project administrators. So by giving them project administrator access, they can start setting things up, like how issues are handled, how RFIs are handled, how document distribution is handled. I mean, and for that, you need project administrator level. So that's kind of good. I tend to go with project administrator. There is a risk with that, and that's quite simply that students can step on each other's work. But it's a risk I'm willing to take. And thankfully, there's a lot of backup in there as well. And if students start dumping and making mess of each other's work, you can step back through versioning if you need to. ACC, just out of interest, well, there's two types of updating. You have horizontal and vertical. Horizontal, first of all, you have a file. You update it, you call it V2. And then you change the file name to V3, V4, V5, whatever it is. And if you've ever written a thesis, you have final thesis, final thesis, final thesis, that story. Now that's horizontal because you're creating multiple files. Vertical integration keeps the same file, but it allows you to step back through the various versions. And that's what you're tracking. You're not tracking new files, you're tracking changes to that file. So ACC does that really nicely. Now, in terms of user accounts, these need to be created and maintained. And unfortunately, this is normally done by the academics, the academic lead. In this case, it's me. Now, you think, well, what's the big deal there? Well, I have like 300 students. And I've got to onboard and offboard them twice a year for each semester. So this creates a fair degree of headache. So learning how to do this efficiently is what I'm trying to think about here. When you are doing your student onboarding, there's two major components. Well, there's a bunch of things here. You need to have their Autodesk account, or they need to create. Well, they don't need to create one. You can actually instigate that entire process for them. I'll step through the bit. The next one is each module needs to be licensed through Autodesk Account Administration. Now, if you're an academic, if you have your Autodesk Education account, you probably would have noticed that you can apply for 125 licenses for Revit. Or you can apply for, 125 licenses for Navisworks, et cetera, Same panel is in here, except when you look at it, it's going to say something like Build Unlimited or various versions of ACC product. So that's what you need to have there. User accounts need to be created on ACC, the ACC instance, and then, of course, you need to apply those to the project. So the first one there is applying the license through your account management tab. Now, I've given the link up there, manage.autodesk.com. It's obviously behind the login screen and everything else. But what you're looking for there is user management by product. And in there, you can assign users. So what you do is you click on this nice little button here, and it gives you the option to upload a CSV. That CSV contains very simply their username, which is typically their email address. You combine that with their first name, their last name, you're done. But keep the CSV file. That's really important. Keep that, because you're going to use it again and again and again. So keep that CSV. The next thing you need to do is you need to get into the project you've created for them in ACC. Well, you actually don't need the project just yet, but you need to get into ACC itself, into the administration panel, and you need to apply them in there. So it's the same sort of process. You're going to add members there for the far right there, and you're going to, again, dump in that list of email addresses. Now, because you've already created their accounts previously, they would have received an invitation to join Autodesk. against that domain profile. And once that's validated, we're good to go. So that would be that one. There is another little trick here, which is quite interesting. Within the ACC platform, you have a company and you have a role. Now, they're really obvious, really, when you think about it. I mean, if you have multiple companies working in a platform like this, then you just tag in their company there. Create the company, apply the user, company name, perfect sense. For us in academia, we can use that differently. We can just say, take that and say, well, you're not in a company, you're in a class. So you might be civil engineering year 2, civil engineering year 3, whatever. Use that, because that metadata will allow you to filter and understand your user base deeper when you get more students on there. The default role as well. So with the default role, you have a bunch of them in there. You have VDC managers, BIM managers, administrators, blah, blah, blah. They're all in there, but you can create one for student. And then you can set up some common data that you would expect, or common things that a student should be able to do within your system, the types of rights and things like that that they should have in the system. So use that one. That metadata is your friend. Now, what we do next is we apply those users we've dumped in, and we apply them to the project. Now, you'll see in here again, now this is our third time with this. Okay, we now have to apply our users to the projects. So very simply, we create the users in account administration. Okay, it's kind of separate to ACC. When we get into ACC, we need to take those same users and tell the system that these Autodesk account holders have access to ACC, or at least our instance of it. And the third part is we need to apply those users to the project we've selected. That make sense? Now, these have been traditionally the tripping points for people. It's like, but I put them on there. But it's like, yeah, but unless you put it on to all three, it's not going to work. So it's the three things there. It's a bit annoying, but again, CSV is your friend. Copy, paste, in they go. So, yeah, just add them in there and tickety-boo, off you go. Yeah, and to wrap up, well, the docs and the build functionality are the most used. Now, I've got on the side here a screenshot out of the build, and within that, you'll see you got sheets, files, issues, forms, photos, RFIs, submittals, meetings, blah, 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 all the way through there. This is a very, very rich platform, and I would encourage people teaching in the AEC domain to take advantage of it. You know, we have like zero cost to us. You know, it's all part of your Autodesk education packages, so use it. It is well worth the effort. You can create a much more interesting and live experience for students. Now, project member access is appropriate in many instances. You don't have to give project admin, but for me, I tend to default to project admin because I'm lazy. If I'm brutally honest, it just means all my headaches go away immediately. And it solved more headaches than it created, so that's always a good thing. But you know, there is times when I will have just access to students at project level. They can still create issues, they can still do RFIs and all that stuff, but they can't modify the files. Incidentally, one of the things as well I would consider on this is I'm a big fan of exploratory learning. I want people to get their hands on these tools and try to break them. Not necessarily try to break them, although that can often be the result. I want them to explore them. I want them to get in there. I want them to find new uses for it. I want them to feel comfortable in that, because I believe that's how we're going to get the next generation of professionals to truly understand this stuff. There is opportunities for competition via World Skills, which is a great one. So World Skills actually have an entire competition based around Revit and BIM 360, or I was going to say BIM 360, oops, ACC. So that's an opportunity. It's a great opportunity for students to learn from. And my personal thing that I'm kind of into is APS. So you may have heard of Forge in the past. Well, like all things Autodesk, they get rebranded, and it's now called APS, Autodesk Platform Services. This is your window into the back end of this thing. And I can tell you, it's a wonderful place to be. So all this stuff that I've been telling you about, you know, 3 email addresses and all the rest, that's the front end way of doing it. You can do this from the back end. It's not finished yet. I'm still building it, but that's what's coming down the tracks. Now, APS will give you a number of tools, so go have a play with APS and allow your students to, because they will get such a great experience from this. Again, talking back to Cesar's presentation, we need to teach students now to be a lot more digitally literate than they currently are. This does not form a lot of programs. This stuff absolutely should be in here and now. But we are always looking for those students, the unicorns, that are going to have that extra set of skills. So this will, like many other things, will give them opportunities. And that is it from me. So thank you very much, and I'll happy to take questions later on, I guess.